Okay. So really thank you for inviting me to this conference, and thanks for the organization. So my speak is about the decline of theorization, a threat for science integrity. So scientific knowledge makes it possible to design technologies, as Christine said, but these, among other things, cause ever greater damage to the biosphere. It is easy to think that these problems are mainly caused by the productivism of the capitalist economic model and the technologies that support it. We can also see this crisis as caused by a misalignment between a technical system and the knowledge necessary for the individual and social appropriation of these technical systems. According to the philosopher Bernard Stiegler, this misalignment, or rather this disruption, takes roots in naive vision of technology by the governing authorities. It is intrinsically good and the solution to societal problems. So it's a technofix vision. For example, research on endocrine disruptors. Once the toxicity of one of these molecules is suspected, it is studied at length by researchers until a scientific consensus is reached, often slowed down by industrial lobbies. The legislation comes late after the damage to health and the environment has been done. We are faced with a very deleterious knowledge delay. To come out to the disruption and find rational remedies to the Anthropocene crisis, it is necessary to generate new knowledge that change our understanding of the issues related to technology and life. And in science, this means creating new theories. We are witnessing a decline in theorizing in the natural science, first at the political and economic level, where there is a reluctance to transformative research in favor of research more conservative. Even if science produces empirical results that destabilize theories, this does not induce the renewal, resulting in a disorganization of theoretical knowledge that threatens the integrity of science. So we're going to see what are the historical and political roots for this decline. And I propose to give an explanation using the model of République of Science of Mr. Polanyi. So this model describes scientific research as a non-mechanical organization of explorers that is explicitly distinct from a market model. And each researcher maximizes the reputation they obtains by producing articles evaluated through two complementary and antagonistic merit criteria. So conformism, that is include plausibility, precision, scientific interest of the subject, and originality. So the degree of surprise of scientists learning the results. The scientific authority is assured after a process of contextual interpretation of these criteria. The authority is based on a critical synthesis of existing knowledge and has two functions: to determine the selection of new projects to be founded, and also validate articles by peer review. It finally allows the researcher to propose an original project and to increase his merit. The criteria of antagonistic and complementary merits allow the improvement of knowledge, of the evolution of knowledge, because a new article changes the context that partially determines the scientific authority. So this circular process encourages its own questioning and is fundamentally based on the originality of his member. Sadly, in the 60s, it was noted that technological innovation ensure rapid economic growth, and which is considered to be inherently good, and science becomes a public good, but governed by the government. It sets research priorities and organizes central research planning. This add non-epistemic merit criterion, that is the societal relevance of the research topic. So, in this case, research must be driven by economic growth. And then the neoliberal policy of science at the interest of 21st centuries is characterized by the introduction of artificial competition between researchers. As you know, the policy favors unequal and Darwinian reforms, where scientists are considered generic and interchangeable individuals. The rapprochement between private and public research induces the growing participation of industry in the process of orientation of public research and the introduction of commercial morals. In this context, scientific projects must sell themselves and no longer hesitate to chant big and realistic promises, like, for example, reprogramming the evolution of humanity, as can say the Nobel Prize Jennifer Doudna. This pressure on scientific production induces a lack of reproducibility, and fraud explodes in certain disciplines, resulting in a loss of reliability, transparency, and honesty. The planning of research priorities is this time decentralized, but the idea is to establish a market of scientific projects between researchers and stakeholders, so mainly the industrial. The state must then introduce a top-down project, that is to say mission-oriented toward an urgent need of society in order to guide the stakeholders. In this context, the content of science is non-epistemical merit criterion is no longer the result of a questionable choice. So theorizing requires taking a broader view of than a single theory and moving away from subdisciplinary over specialization and adopting epistemological reflexivity. Theoretical activities is necessary for science because, as can say Wilhelm, facts calls for theory, but they do not give rise to the concepts that unify them or the intellectual intention they developed. In fact, it consists in organizing theory. It consists in organizing knowledge by means of critical analysis and synthesis, while including them in a discourse that gives them new meaning. Thus, the critical synthesis of existing facts is central in research. However, since the market partially assumes the selection and orientation of research projects, researchers are no longer encouraged to make critical synthesis of existing knowledge to identify an original subject. So, they practice less and less know-how, which induce a proletarianization of researchers and the decline in theorization of the progressive erosion of scientific authority. Thus, the policy of science has instrumentalized research, especially as the government instructions are somehow internalized in the Republic of Science and in the mind of researchers, generating an almost unconscious submission to this policy. Okay. So science is not a problem solving as technophics like to think. but it's also theory building based on critical knowledge, which go against common sense, but which is also built against the knowledge of the majority. We need a school of thought in which, within it, novelty, permitted by pluralism and conflict debate, derives from the reflection of some who dare to go against the dominant thought. The construction of scientific knowledge has always been linked to this essential component of democracy, namely the presence of a minority that thinks differently. Oh, 5 minutes? Okay. Democracy is the formation of a majority that governs, but it's also the presence of differences. Science needs the critical component of democracy and strengthens its ability to explore new paths and enrich debate. Scientific research is a difficult dialogue between distant perspectives, and it is a collaboration between different subjects with unlikely and profound ideas. Thus, one of the fundamental rules of the game of science and democracy is the conflictual plurality. Scientific knowledge becomes functional in society when there is a consensus, that is to say that conflicts that have existence between researchers on the same subject disappear thanks to the debate. So conflictual plurality is so it's really important, but with the market of science, the conflictual plurality is replaced by competition that pushes not to find an adversary and work in a productivist way in a project without a risk of questioning by a critical otherness. This induces a process of compartmentalization of the field of research in continuous extension and dissipation of the conflictual plurality. In addition, the market system strengthens the competition, which destroys the chances of open collaboration. Bibliometrics, which is essential for the market of science, forbids minority thinking. Indeed, each evaluation of the scientific work involves the vote of all experts over the world and leaves a machine counting the quotations. The majority vote per se, but it is not democracy. Democracy also requires crucially the enablement and even the promotion of the thinking of an active minority. With bibliometrics, computers network are used not to make that knowledge available to all, but to normalize and ask all to adapt to the thinking of the majority, to channel all the minds toward the strongest school of thought and even toward banality, common sense, and fashion. In addition, the massification of articles in a standardized and compressed format favors the transmission of information over the interpretative qualities of opinion. So the factual minimum is stated at the expense. So I'm gonna move to the conclusion. So the current science policy favors the homogenization of thought, the productivist standardization, and the disciplinary partitioning. It's an epistemic framework of what we call computational empiricism. It breaks down pluralism, diversity, qualitative debate, and originality, and it belittles the work of critical synthesis of existing knowledge, which is necessary for theorization and therefore for the evolution of science, and also erases the conflicting plurality that generates ID and is fundamental in both science and democracy. So science requires democracy, and science is an essential component of democracy. Unfortunately, we are witnessing the synchronous erosion of the Republic of Science and the Democratic Republic. And so this policy therefore threatens the integrity of science as an organization of knowledge evolving toward a better understanding of the world. However, it is urgent to get out of the disruption and face the crisis of the Anthropocene. For this, it is necessary to change our relationship to the living, and by proposing, among other, new theories, especially in biology. This could be possible in conducting epistemologic reflection of our current practices, like reconsidering the current organization of research in the natural science, and above all, its evaluation by making it more democratic, less mechanical, and more engaged in diversity and novelty. And finally, fight against the avatar of old theories and their transhumanist delusion as reprogramming evolution. Thank you.